When Keanu Reeves steps onto the stage of the Melissa Carter Show, the audience expects another polite, thoughtful interview from Hollywood's most beloved star. But Melissa isn't here for a friendly chat. She has a plan. Behind the cameras, producers prepare their edits. The questions are designed to trap him, and the audience has been carefully selected to turn against him at the right moment. This isn't an interview, it's an ambush. Yet, as Keanu takes his seat, his expression is unreadable. Melissa smiles, confident that she's about to create the viral moment of the year. But what she doesn't realize, Keanu already sees the trap, and in just a few minutes, he's going to turn it against her. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. Keanu Reeves sat in his kitchen, sipping black coffee, scrolling through his inbox. Among the usual messages, film schedules, charity event invitations, fan letters, one subject line stood out: exclusive invitation, a candid conversation on the Melissa Carter Show. Keanu's eyes scanned the message. Melissa Carter, one of the most influential talk show hosts in America. Her show, famous for tackling controversial topics, had a reputation for sharp, strategic questioning, especially toward traditional figures in Hollywood. Keanu wasn't naive. He knew what this was. Still, he took another sip of coffee, thinking. Then, with a calm breath, he typed his response. "I'd be honored." Back at the Melissa Carter Show studio, producers circled around a whiteboard, sketching out the perfect trap. Melissa leaned against her desk, flipping through her cue cards. "He's an easy target." Her producer, Jake, smirked. "Keanu Reeves? Seriously? People love that guy." Melissa rolled her eyes. "That's exactly why it'll work. The world sees him as some wholesome, untouchable, nice guy. But Hollywood needs to move forward. We need new narratives." She tossed a card onto the table. "We'll paint him as outdated, stuck in the past, a relic of a Hollywood that should be left behind." Jake nodded slowly. "And if he plays into it?" Melissa smirked. "Then we'll make sure that's the clip that goes viral." The day of the interview, Keanu stepped out of his black motorcycle, his demeanor as calm as ever. A few crew members whispered as he passed, some excited, some skeptical. Even the security guard at the entrance couldn't help but grin. "Big fan, Mr. Reeves." Keanu gave a small nod. "Thanks, man." Inside, Melissa's team moved quickly, setting up the perfect shot. Producers adjusted cameras, made sure the audience was filled with the right mix of people. Some true fans, others ready to challenge him. Every angle was designed to build a narrative. And Keanu? Keanu simply took his seat across from Melissa, crossing his hands in his lap. Melissa greeted him with a flawless smile. The red light on the camera blinked. "Keanu Reeves, welcome to the show." And just like that, the trap was set. Melissa leaned in slightly, her tone warm, inviting, too perfect. "Let's start with an easy one. What do you think about the future of Hollywood?" Keanu gave a small smile. The same easy, calm smile he always had. But what no one in the room knew, not Melissa, not the producers, not the carefully placed audience members, was that Keanu Reeves had already seen right through them. And within minutes, he would turn this interview into something they never saw coming. The studio was perfectly staged. The cameras framed Melissa Carter and Keanu Reeves at just the right angles. The lighting softened Keanu's features, giving him the look of a classic Hollywood icon, one that Melissa planned to deconstruct piece by piece. Her producers sat behind the monitors, watching the feed with sharp, calculating eyes. This wasn't just an interview, it was a setup. And Melissa, she was about to spring the trap. Melissa flashed a warm smile, the kind designed to disarm her guests. "Keanu, thank you so much for being here. It's an honor." Keanu gave a small nod. "The pleasure's mine." His voice was calm even. The audience clapped softly, the atmosphere still light. Melissa leaned in slightly. "You have one of the most fascinating careers in Hollywood. You've been an action hero, a dramatic actor, even a romantic lead. And somehow, people just seem to adore you." Keanu tilted his head slightly. "I've been lucky." Melissa chuckled, shaking her head. "Luck, maybe. But let's be honest, you represent something very specific in Hollywood. A certain type of masculinity. Keanu's expression didn't change. He could feel it. The shift. The first move. Melissa kept her tone light, almost playful. Hollywood is changing, Keanu. We're seeing a shift in the kinds of stories being told. The era of the untouchable action hero, the strong, silent type, feels like it's fading. She paused, watching him carefully. Do you think actors like you still have a place in the future of cinema? Keanu sat back slightly. For a moment the room felt still. Then he smiled. Well, I think stories change, but values don't. Melissa's smile twitched. Values? Keanu nodded. Courage, loyalty, standing up for what's right. Those things don't go out of style. How we tell those stories might change, but why we tell them doesn't. The audience shifted slightly. Melissa noticed. She needed to push harder. Melissa's smile tightened as she flipped through her cue cards. She skipped ahead. No more small talk. It was time for the real attack. Keanu, you've played some of the most iconic action heroes of all time. Neo John Wick. Characters that are powerful, fearless, dominant. But isn't that part of the problem? Keanu raised an eyebrow. Melissa leaned in. Don't you think these kinds of roles promote an outdated version of masculinity? One that glorifies violence, revenge, and an unwillingness to show vulnerability? The audience stilled. Some people nodded, murmuring in agreement. Others looked between Keanu and Melissa, sensing the tension rising. The producers smiled to themselves. This was it, the soundbite. If Keanu responded defensively, if he got angry or dismissive, they had their viral clip. But Keanu just smiled. He glanced at Melissa, then at the audience, his expression unreadable. Then, in the calmest, most effortless tone, he said, Well, that's an interesting way to look at it. A pause. Melissa leaned forward. The entire room waited. Because in the next few seconds, Keanu Reeves was about to flip this entire interview upside down. The silence stretched. Melissa Carter sat poised, waiting for Keanu Reeves to falter, to hesitate, to react. But he didn't. Instead, he smiled. A calm, effortless smile, one that carried more weight than 1,000 words. The audience leaned in. The producers held their breath. And then, Keanu spoke. That's an interesting way to look at it. His voice was steady, unwavering. Melissa raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to continue. He did. But I don't think telling stories about courage, sacrifice, and protecting the people you love is toxic. Do you? Melissa's smile faltered, just slightly. The audience shifted. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't angry. He was flipping the question back on her. And now, she had to answer. Melissa laughed lightly, masking her discomfort. Of course not. But the way those values are shown in Hollywood, let's be honest, Keanu, a lot of your films center around violence. Don't you think that has an impact? Keanu nodded slowly, as if he were actually considering her words. Then he leaned forward, his voice softer but pointed. Do you believe stories should stop showing conflict? Melissa hesitated. Keanu's expression didn't change. Because if we remove every story that includes struggle, redemption, and yes, even violence, then what are we left with? The audience murmured. Melissa blinked. That's not what I'm saying. Keanu smiled again, but this time, there was an edge to it. Then, what are you saying? Melissa's team scrambled behind the cameras. This wasn't going how they planned. Keanu wasn't playing into the narrative. He wasn't falling into their trap. Instead, he was making them justify their own argument. And the more he spoke, the more the audience began to question Melissa's intent. Some crossed their arms. Others exchanged glances. Keanu saw it. So did Melissa. And she didn't like it. Not one bit. Melissa forced another charming smile, adjusting in her seat. She needed to regain dominance over the conversation. So she pivoted. Keanu, you've always been admired for your kindness, your humility, and yet so many of your roles portray men who solve problems with their fists. Isn't that a contradiction? Keanu tilted his head slightly. Why would it be? Melissa blinked. Keanu continued. Are you saying that people who practice kindness aren't capable of defending others? Boom. The audience visibly reacted. Melissa paused too long. The producers panicked. They needed to cut to commercial. But Keanu wasn't finished. Keanu glanced at the audience, his voice still calm, controlled. I was raised to believe that kindness and strength aren't opposites. A pause. That standing up for what's right doesn't mean you're aggressive. It means you care. Another pause. The energy in the room had completely changed. Melissa knew it, Keanu knew it. And in that moment, the balance of power shifted. Melissa's producers scrambled behind the cameras, whispering frantically. They needed to redirect the conversation, to regain control. But it was too late, because now, Keanu had set the tone, and in the next few moments, he would take it even further. The room was silent. Keanu's calm response had caught everyone off guard. Melissa had expected hesitation, frustration, maybe even defensiveness. But instead, he had given her nothing. Just a small smile, just a single sentence. And somehow, that made the moment even more tense. Keanu sat back slightly, still relaxed, composed. Then, "That's an interesting way to look at it." Melissa blinked, waiting for him to explain himself. Keanu folded his hands together. "But I see it differently." Melissa kept her expression steady, though she felt a flicker of irritation. "Oh, how so?" Keanu's voice remained gentle, but there was a quiet weight behind it. "If protecting the people we love, if standing up for what's right, if fighting against injustice makes someone toxic..." He paused, then with the softest shrug, "Then I'm happy to be toxic." A murmur spread through the audience. A few people nodded. Some exchanged uncertain glances. Even the producers watching from the control booth hesitated. This wasn't what they expected. Melissa forced a small laugh, shaking her head. "That's a very poetic answer, Keanu, but let's talk facts." She flipped through her cue cards, her tone sharpening. "Your films, John Wick, The Matrix, Speed, all center around violence. A man who solves his problems with his fists, his guns. Doesn't that send the wrong message?" Keanu tilted his head, considering her words. Then, "I think stories are more than what happens on the surface." Melissa frowned. Keanu leaned forward slightly. "I think what matters isn't what my characters do, but why they do it." Keanu exhaled slowly, as if choosing his next words carefully. "I was raised by a single mother." The audience quieted. Even Melissa blinked, caught off guard by the sudden shift in tone. Keanu continued, "I grew up watching her work harder than anyone I knew, watching her struggle, sacrifice, protect me." A pause. "She taught me that strength isn't about power. It's about responsibility, about standing up for people who can't always stand up for themselves." Melissa opened her mouth to respond, but he wasn't finished. "And the men who taught me martial arts, they taught me the same thing, that real strength isn't about hurting people." His gaze locked onto hers. "It's about knowing when not to." The room was completely still. Melissa forced another laugh, but it was thinner this time. She could feel the momentum shifting. Keanu wasn't playing into the narrative she had prepared. If anything, he was dismantling it piece by piece. She cleared her throat. "That's a beautiful sentiment, Keanu. But at the end of the day, your movies are about revenge, violence, aggression. Don't you think Hollywood should be moving away from that?" Keanu considered her words. Then, softly, "I think Hollywood should move toward truth." Melissa frowned. Keanu gestured toward the audience. "People don't watch John Wick because they want to see violence." His voice was measured, thoughtful. "They watch it because they understand loss, they understand grief, and they understand the desire to protect what matters." A pause. "That's not toxic, that's human." The audience shifted again. Melissa could feel it. She was losing them. Melissa's heart pounded. She had to regain control, fast. She glanced at her producers, who were already signaling for her to change tactics. This wasn't going how they had planned. So with a forced smile, she set down her cue cards. And then she made a choice, one that she would soon regret. She leaned in and said, "Keanu, do you really believe that? Or is this just another Hollywood script?" The audience gasped, and Keanu just smiled. Because Melissa Carter had just made her biggest mistake yet. The words hung in the air. "Keanu, do you really believe that? Or is this just another Hollywood script?" The audience shifted. A few murmured, sensing the hostility in Melissa's voice. The producers in the control room leaned forward, watching closely. This was it. Melissa had pushed him. Now they just needed Keanu to push back. But instead, he didn't react at all. Keanu sat calmly, his expression unreadable. Then he let out a soft chuckle. A Hollywood script? He tapped his fingers lightly against his knee, taking his time. Then, "No, I don't think truth needs a script." Melissa's smile tightened. Keanu met her gaze, his voice steady, controlled. "But I do think people sometimes mistake conversation for confrontation." The audience stilled. Melissa blinked. Keanu continued. "I came here thinking we were having a conversation." He tilted his head slightly. "But it feels like you came here looking for something else." Melissa flushed. A few gasps rippled through the crowd. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She needed to take control back, fast. Melissa forced another laugh, but it was thinner this time. She picked up her cue cards, flipping through them quickly. She had to change tactics. She had to make Keanu look out of touch, outdated, irrelevant. So she tried a different approach. "Keanu, you've had an incredible career." She smiled smoothly, her tone turning saccharine. "But the industry is changing. Wouldn't you agree that it's time for new voices, new stories, maybe even new faces?" Keanu simply raised an eyebrow. Melissa continued. "There's been a lot of talk about older stars stepping aside to make space for the next generation. Do you think maybe it's time to do the same?" The audience stilled again. Some looked at Keanu. Others looked at Melissa, realizing what she had just implied. She wasn't asking about Hollywood. She was telling Keanu Reeves that he was past his time. The trap was set. All she needed was for him to take the bait. But Keanu, he didn't take it. Instead, he simply smiled. And then, with a voice so calm it sent shivers down the audience's spine, he said, "When I was a kid, I was taught that respect for those who came before us was essential." A pause. Then, "It's interesting how today, respect seems optional." The room went silent. Not a single person moved. Even the producers in the control room stopped what they were doing. Melissa's smile dropped. She tried to laugh, but it sounded forced, because she could feel it. She had lost. Keanu hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't attacked her, but he had just turned her entire argument against her. And the audience? They weren't laughing with her anymore. They were watching Keanu, and some of them were already pulling out their phones, recording. Melissa swallowed, trying to recover. She glanced at her producers, waiting for a signal, a way out. But it was too late, because while Melissa was still trying to figure out what had just happened, the rest of the world, they were about to see it for themselves, because that clip, it was already going viral. The moment hung in the air like a final note of a symphony, one that no one expected Keanu to play. The studio was silent. The audience stared, some leaning forward, others already holding up their phones, recording the moment. Melissa Carter's smile had faded, her perfectly curated demeanor slipping. For the first time in her own show, she wasn't the one in control. And the worst part, she knew it. As soon as the interview cut to commercial break, the damage was already done. Inside the control room, producers scrambled, shouting orders. "We need to edit this before it airs." "Too late. People are already posting it." Because while Melissa Carter's team was trying to contain the situation, the internet, it had already exploded. Within minutes, the clip had been shared on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Trending hashtags appeared almost instantly. #respect isn't optional, #Keanu didn't flinch. #Melissa Carter exposed comment sections blew up. Keanu just destroyed her with one sentence and didn't even raise his voice. She walked right into it. She thought she could trap him, and he made her look like a fool. This is how you handle an ambush. Absolute class. In real time, people reacted, dissecting every second of the moment. Influencers jumped in, news outlets started covering it, and Melissa Carter. She was trapped in the very kind of viral storm she had built her career creating for others. Back in the studio, Melissa Carter's team was scrambling. Her assistant approached, whispering urgently, "Melissa, the clip is everywhere." Melissa clenched her jaw, forcing a tense smile as she sipped her water. She had planned for this interview to trend, but not like this, not with her looking weak. She needed to fix this, fast. The show returned from commercial break, the cameras rolling. Melissa took a deep breath and forced a laugh, trying to reset the mood. "Well, Keanu, that certainly was a spirited discussion." Keanu just smiled. Melissa turned back to the camera. "Folks, we'll continue this conversation online. Don't forget to subscribe but it was too late, because while Melissa tried to pivot, people weren't listening to her anymore. They were listening to Keanu, and now, he didn't need to say another word. By the end of the night, the interview wasn't just trending, it was dominating the news cycle. Mainstream media picked it up, breaking down the exchange frame by frame. Pundits weighed in. Some defended Melissa, claiming she was just asking the tough questions, but others saw right through it. She tried to bait him, and Keanu, being Keanu, turned it into a masterclass in humility. There's a reason people love this guy. He doesn't play these media games. Melissa Carter underestimated him. She thought she could corner him. She forgot who she was dealing with. And Melissa? She had to watch in real time as her own reputation crumbled. Because for once, she wasn't controlling the narrative, and it was about to get even worse. The next morning, as Melissa Carter entered her office, her assistant was waiting, phone in hand. Her face was pale. "Melissa, we have a problem." Melissa exhaled sharply, rubbing her temples. "What now?" The assistant turned her phone around. A new video had surfaced. Keanu Reeves, walking out of a small cafe, was approached by a reporter. The journalist, holding up a microphone, asked, "Keanu, do you have anything to say about the interview with Melissa Carter?" And Keanu, he just smiled. Then in the calmest voice imaginable, he said, "Gentleness never goes out of style." The video ended. Melissa Carter's heart sank, because in just 6 words, Keanu had said everything, and now there was nothing she could do to stop it. Melissa Carter stared at her screen. The video of Keanu Reeves had already surpassed 5 million views in less than 24 hours. 6 words, just 6 words. Gentleness never goes out of style. And now, those words were everywhere. Social media was on fire. A new hashtag emerged. #GentlenessWins. Memes flooded Twitter. GIFs of Keanu smiling at Melissa during the interview appeared next to the moment he delivered the phrase outside the cafe. On TikTok, a trend exploded. People facing tense situations and responding with, "Gentleness never goes out of style." It was a cultural shift. And Keanu? He wasn't even online. Hollywood noticed. Actors and directors took sides. Some praised Keanu as a class act. Others defended Melissa, saying she was just doing her job. But the public, they had already chosen. Keanu Reeves didn't just win the interview, he won the conversation. And Melissa? She was on the wrong side of it. She refused to go down quietly. She recorded a response video. "I have nothing but respect for Keanu Reeves, but let's be honest, his fans took this out of context. I was just doing my job." She paused. Then she delivered her twist. If people can't handle a little healthy debate, maybe the real issue isn't masculinity, maybe it's fragility. Boom, an attempt to flip the narrative. She hit upload and waited. At first her supporters cheered. She's right, Keanu didn't even answer her question. Why does everyone treat Keanu like an untouchable saint? But then, the internet turned. She lost the debate, and now she's blaming Keanu for being too nice. Just like that, her plan backfired. The next day, 3 sponsors pulled out. Her network called an emergency meeting. Then, a new email landed in her inbox. Urgent. Meeting about the future of the Melissa Carter Show. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't just a viral moment. This was career-ending territory, and she was out of moves. Melissa Carter stared at the email. Meeting about the future of the show. Her throat was dry. Her empire was at risk, and all because of him. Keanu Reeves. While Melissa scrambled. Keanu? He hadn't said a word. No statements, no interviews. He went about his life as if nothing had happened. And that only made it worse for Melissa, because whenever someone tried to drag him back into the debate, someone else simply replied, "Gentleness never goes out of style." The internet had already decided. Keanu had won. Melissa? She was just prolonging her own downfall. That afternoon, a reporter caught Keanu outside a bookstore. "Keanu, do you have any final words about the Melissa Carter interview?" Holding a cup of coffee, he paused. Then he smiled, and with his signature grace, he said, "I think we should all try listening more than we speak." A simple sentence. But once again, it was enough. The video went viral immediately. And for Melissa Carter, it was the final nail in the coffin. Melissa Carter built her career on sharp, aggressive interviews, putting Hollywood's biggest names on the spot. She thought Keanu Reeves would be an easy target. She was wrong. From the start, she controlled the conversation, pushing Keanu to admit his portrayal of strong, silent men was outdated. But Keanu? He never took the bait. Instead, he answered with calm, measured words, turning the conversation back on her. Then, with a simple sentence, he dismantled her entire attack. When I was a kid, I was taught that respect for those who came before us was essential. It's interesting how today, respect seems optional. The audience shifted. Melissa felt it. She had lost control. Within hours, the interview went viral. Millions of people dissected every second. #respect isn't optional #. Keanu didn't flinch #. Gentleness wins. Then another video surfaced. Keanu leaving a cafe, responding to a question about the controversy. His answer? Gentleness never goes out of style. That was it. People turned it into memes, TikToks, life mottos, and Melissa Carter, she was stuck in the storm. The backlash wasn't just online. 3 major sponsors pulled out. Viewership plummeted. The network demanded damage control. On her next episode, she addressed the controversy. I regret if my words were misinterpreted. It wasn't a full apology, but it was the closest she would get. And it didn't matter, because the damage was done. Her credibility never recovered. Over the next few months, her show was quietly phased out. Meanwhile, Keanu, he simply moved on. Because some battles aren't won by fighting. Some wars are won with silence. Melissa Carter tried to bury Keanu Reeves. Instead, she buried herself. And Keanu, without even trying, proved the greatest lesson of all. True power doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be real.